Italians have voted. Their choice clear. After 18 months of a technocrat, they've opted for a political firebrand. An EU founding father, Italy, will have its first far-right government since World War II. Hello and welcome to Euronews, to this Italian election special brought to you from the European Parliament here in Brussels. As Italians wait for their new government to be formed, we're taking a look at what the Italian elections outcome will mean for the European Union and the multiple crises facing it. But first, let's meet Brothers of Italy's Giorgia Meloni, the lady set to be Italy's first female Prime Minister.
Italy has decided. And out on top is Giorgia Meloni's far-right Brothers of Italy party, alongside coalition partners Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia, Matteo Salvini's Lega. On Sunday, as Italy's likely new Prime Minister, Meloni struck an unusual conciliatory tone during her victory speech.
I think that the situation in which Italy finds itself, the situation in which the European Union finds itself, the situation with which we have to deal with as a whole, is particularly complex and will require everyone's contribution.
But for all the celebrations in Rome, the win is being treated with caution in Brussels. EU institutions are used to more pro-European governments in Italy, a hope that's rapidly faded after the loss of the country's centre-left parties over the weekend. The Brothers of Italy leader has previously said the EU's so-called party will be over if she wins election, and that Italy will defend its own national interests. A new government is yet to be formed, though, but the right-wing coalition is looking to hit the ground running and start governing in the next few weeks. The question now on the lips of many in Brussels is Meloni really about to crash the EU's party?
Christopher Pitcher's there pondering whether or not Giorgia Meloni will really crash the EU's party. A comment she made recently at a rally. Well, what do members of the European Parliament here in Brussels think? Joining me here to discuss, Robert Zīle, Latvian MEP from the European Conservatives and Reformists, the ECR, the party affiliated, of course, to Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party. Robert Zīle, you're also the Vice President, one of them, of the European Parliament here in Brussels. So thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to Euronews.
Thank you for the invitation.
Also joining us today is Lucas Mandl, an Austrian MEP from the European People's Party, the centre-right group here in the European Parliament that's linked to Forza Italia, the group, of course, of Mr. Berlusconi, the Italian politician and MEP. So welcome to Euronews, Lucas Mandl.
Thanks for the invite.
Great to have you. From the Greens, from Germany, we're joined by Alexandra Giese. Also very welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not least a big hello to Juan Fernando López Aguilar, Spanish MEP from the Socialists and Democrats, also the chair here in the European Parliament of the Libe community. So you're an expert on justice and home affairs.
Yes, it is so, and pleased to be here, and thank you for having us.
Welcome to Euronews to you all. Unfortunately, all the Italian MEPs that we invited were obviously a little bit busy, most of them based this week in Italy, so they couldn't join us. But we are grateful to you all for being here, and thank you so much to our viewers for being with us here as well on Euronews. So first, let's get some reactions from our panel, starting with yourself. Robert Zīle, I imagine your party here is in celebration mode, as we could see there from those images, the way Giorgia Meloni is.
Yes, you are right. We had a group meeting today, ECR group, European Conservative Reformists, and of course we congratulated our Italian colleagues, Fratelli d'Italia. And actually one of the co-chairmen of ECR group is Raffaele Fitto. I think well-known politicians for years in the European Parliament, and I think we really are happy with this outcome.
Okay. And are you concerned that some of the leaders that were first to congratulate Giorgia Meloni and the Brothers of Italy were Viktor Orban and Mateusz Morawiecki from Poland, who have a little bit of tension perhaps with some here in Brussels?
Well, I think many leaders congratulated Giorgia Meloni, and she's also ECR party leader, as like Manfred Weber is European People's Party leader, and so I think it's a normal that she received from the heads of state some congratulations. She is not yet Prime Minister, technically and legally. We will wait it, but will of Italian citizens is obvious, I think, and she should be Italian Prime Minister. And I don't know what's wrong with Morawiecki, with with the Prime Minister of Poland, and we know what role Poland is playing currently in the war in Ukraine, as a help to refugees and also support.
Indeed, we'll come back to that.
Issues and
we'll come back to that a little bit later, Robert Steele. But let's just focus now on the reactions here in Brussels, because, as you said, Giorgia Meloni, she is not yet the Prime Minister. She probably will be, and her first visit to Brussels may not be until December. It'll still be Mario Draghi at the next EU summit. But Juan López Aguilar, a reaction from you on the Italian elections?
Well, it's well known that Italy has been a political lab for years. For some of us, it is also an anticipation that what could happen in other member states of Europe. But certainly, it's been a shake. For one thing, it's a shift of power, not only coming from a technocratic government expressing exhaustion from no politics in a founding big member state of the European Union, Italy, nothing less, the third economy in the euro, big thing, is a major event, but also leaning on the extreme right for the first time ever since the Second World War. So there is a lesson to be learned about this. First, lack of turnout. Just 51% of the people went to the polls, went actually to vote. Second, division of the progressives. Big mistake. Third, of course, taking the lead according to the electoral reforms that have been taking place over the last years means that the far right is making it to government. And that will mean a major impact on a number of major issues here in the European Parliament lawmaking, not only the EU decision-making in all, but also in the European Parliament decision-making. For one thing, migration issues. This election has been mostly on anti-migration stand from Giorgia Meloni. And that means that, for one thing, Italy has fallen from the so-called Med5, which had been fighting according to different political orientations, conservative and progressive, but all together for solidarity and shared responsibility. It's yet to be seen. What is it going to be the impact of the new Migration and Asylum Pact in the European Union?
We'll come back to that pact a little bit later, and of course the debate on migration. But now I'd like to hear from yourself, from Lucas Mandel, and hear these comments coming from Giorgia Meloni at her rallies that the party's over in Brussels. I mean, she looks and she sounds like she wants to shake things up here. She wants to make you feel uncomfortable. What's your reaction to the outcome there?
I will feel comfortable when Italy and the new Italian government and the colleagues in the new Italian parliament will act under the umbrella of our common European approach, given many crises we face at the moment. And this is why I would say we have to measure them by their deeds. And this is why, as each and every government in the European Union, in each and every member state, we will have to see how they behave regarding the Russian aggression, regarding inflation, regarding the energy crisis, regarding climate change and all the different various crisis scenarios we face at the moment. And here we have, to, of course, to work together with a democratically legitimized government, as in each and every country within Europe and beyond, by the way. But of course, we will have to remain taking a critical look on the concrete policies that will appear. As already mentioned, the new parliament in Italy will convene not before mid of October. Then a new government will be established. So we will have to have this close look in the weeks during the weeks ahead.
So everyone very much in wait-and-see mode, because of course one thing is being out campaigning and what you say to your people, and another thing is of course when you come to Brussels as a head of state and how you discuss and interact here. Alexander Giza, I'd like to hear from your perspective what the Greens have been saying this week, looking at that outcome, that victory. The
Greens are quite worried because having another extreme right government and a head of government who says she is inspired by Viktor Orban is indeed worrying for us. Viktor Orban transformed a democracy into an autocracy, as all international organizations say. If this is a role model for Giorgia Meloni, we are quite worried about what is going to happen in Italy. And campaigning on anti-European propaganda, saying that the party is over in Europe, when Italy has been very involved in European politics in the past years and has played a very important role, is basically denying reality And knowing, she knows this is a fact. I mean, she knows that Italy is receiving almost 200 billion from the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and rightly so. This is extremely important, but I don't think you can use that money and know it's coming from Europe. It's coming because the former Italian government fought very hard for it, and then go out to your people and say Europe is against us, campaigning on this anti-European propaganda. This is not correct, and this is quite worrying. I feel that she will have two faces. She will have a very extremist face in Italy, attacking fundamental rights, as she's been doing the past month, for example, of LGBTI people, of migrants, and on the other hand, being very moderate, having a very moderate face towards Europe, because clearly Italy, especially now with the high inflation, with this big energy crisis, will need Europe's support and will need the European Central Bank to have a good monetary policy. And we will support that, but I think we have to recognize that as a head of state and play a loyal and correct game there.
Robert Seeley, you're nodding your head there in disagreement.
It's a very dark picture. So I think of course, we can call just our political opponents extreme right or extreme something or far right. European Conservative Reformist Group is the center, right from the center. It's correct. But behind us on the right side are some other parties which are not belonging to family of political parties in Europe. And as I said, Giorgia Meloni is a chair of the European Conservative Reformist Party. Viktor Orban doesn't belong to this family, political family. It belonged for many years in EPP until now it's independent, so-called. So that's why I think it's too dark picture. And also Meloni strongly said during the campaign that of course she is interested to continue with a plan, RFF plan, which is Resilience Recovery Facility, which for Italy is really important. But we have to also remember that Italy also makes guarantees for this borrowing of this money. It's our joint borrowing, and also Italians made some guarantees until 2058 to repay back this loan. And also she said that she would like to see constructive work and to renegotiate some parts of RFF national plan. Why? Because all the countries are doing that. Because energy crisis created a recovery EU program, which created totally new situation, and we can use part of RFF money for this new problematic expenditures, like an energy to security energy sector.
Okay, hold that thought. And now we've heard from our four MEPs. Thank you so much for those initial reactions. Let's hear now some views from across Europe. Euronews reporters have been out and about on the streets asking passers-by what they thought of the outcome. Watch out, some didn't even know there was elections taking place in Italy.
Did you know that election took place this weekend in Italy?
The election?
Yeah.
No.
I didn't even know there was an Italian election.
Yes, it was worth it, yeah.
I voted yesterday.
Unfortunately, no.
Do you think that the elections that took place in Italy are important for Europe?
I think it is. It will give a signal to Europe. A radical shift occurred. For me, it's a good thing that a woman is in a position of power.
The fact that she's a woman doesn't mean that it's a good thing.
I am not a fan. I do not like her policies about LGBTQ, immigrant policies. I'm very against that. So I think it's a sad day for Italy.
I don't think it's wrong to restrict immigration a little, not into the European Union, but rather from outside it. As Europe, I think, it is already full.
And I don't know what she stands for in terms of gay marriage and things like that. I hope that won't be the main topics of her policy, because there's a lot of other things to do in Italy currently.
In my opinion, I voted the opposite part. I'm a little bit scared.
No matter the issue, extremism will never lead to anything beneficial to either side, neither to those who propagate it, nor to the ones who sadly need to suffer the consequences. I don't think that's okay.
Italy is moving farther away from Europe, maybe not to the extent of isolationism, but clearly not in the direction of Europe. From that point of view, I don't think that's great.
We're talking about the right, the far right.
Let's say that her past is a little bit controversial.
We live in a world with Putin. Now we have this. It's really scary.
We will see if she was a good choice, if the Italian people made the right choice. We will see.
Well, now we've gotten the view from the streets. Let's dive a little bit deeper into what the new Italian government will mean for relations between Brussels and Rome when it comes to issues like the war in Ukraine, which is, of course, the most pressing issue for the European Union right now. That, of course, and the energy crisis. So I guess my question to you all will be, will the new government sing from the same sing sheet as Mario Draghi has been doing in the past? Will they toe the line on the sanctions, for example, and the EU's response to the war? Lucas Mandl, we'll hear from you first.
It will have to, I would say, and in the best case, they will coordinate a bit with Mario Draghi as well, because he was really a very good person at the right time for Italy and for Europe in its entirety during the pandemic and then during the other crisis that appeared. The pandemic is not yet over and we have the other crisis. And we also have to see there is, at least from my point of view, not a partisan approach to decisions in different parts of Europe, as long as the democratic legitimization is there, as long as the rule of law is in proper place, and as long as the umbrella of EU approach to foreign and security policy, to the Russian aggression and to the other crisis remains met by this new government. I would say we have the situation that, for example, for me, what Berlusconi said last week shocked me a bit. Not only a bit, he mentioned the Putin Russia in a positive way. Even today, he said clearly that Italy will remain under this new government in EU and NATO line, which relieved me a bit. But what this example shows to us is there is still a lot floating around, I would say. And we will have to wait for the new parliament, for the new government, but not only to wait, but also to closely scrutinize what's really happening and clearly to require for Italy to remain within the sanctions regime, within the defense of freedom and peace on European soil. And this is something we will have to focus on in the weeks ahead.
Lucas Aguiar, your thoughts on the same question?
Well, I think we should tell the difference between a variety of levels of analysis. First of all, Giorgia Meloni is leading a coalition. She's not only the leader of Fratelli d'Italia, which, by the way, is the heir of Movimento Sociale Italiano, which stems back all the way to Mussolini's fascists, but also with the company of Lega, again Matteo Salvini, and Forza Italia, Berlusconi, convicted on serious crimes that send shivers down the spine. I won't dwell on the crimes that he's convicted for, so the situation is worrisome for European matters. But you know what? The complicity or the alliance of Giorgia Meloni with the so-called Visegrad group in this particular regard on the Russia aggression, Putin's aggression against Ukraine is yet to be seen. How is going to be unfolded? Because for one thing, Poland has taken the hard line, whereas it is only obvious that Viktor Orban's Hungary is trying by all means to shed a cast of understanding with Putin and trying to create problems to this unity which is so much needed in order to stand before Russia's aggression and stand with Ukraine. So it's yet to be seen how is this external dimension and security dimension is going to be implemented by whomever is going to be in charge of the foreign or defense ministry of the new coalition government. But in this regard, I think the right thing to do is to stand united. It is the only way we can actually make the sanctions that have been imposed on Putin's regime meaningful.
And that unity, obviously, we're seeing cracks in that unity. I mean, the European Union and the institutions have been touting the fact that the 27 have remained united for the couple of months, but we are seeing those cracks. And do you think we could see more with this new coalition in Italy?
Well, definitely. I mean, Giorgia Meloni herself has taken a transatlantic approach so far supporting Ukraine. But as my colleague pointed out, she has two coalition partners that are close friends or admirers of Putin. And Berlusconi came out in public Italian television last week saying that Putin should have just replaced the Kiev government by good people and have his soldiers stay around Kiev rather than spreading out in the whole country. I mean, just imagine. This will be a person who has an influence on this government. I don't know how Giorgia Meloni will be able to control that. In a coalition, you always have to make concessions. And I think in this winter, where we will have enormously high energy prices, people will be cold. We might have a recession if push comes to shove. And Russian propaganda will have an enormous role in Italian media, in Italian social networks. It always has had. We know that Matteo Salvini's Lega probably has been funded in the past by Putin. There's a lot of press covering about that. And this propaganda will find its way into the Italian public debate. It will influence the government. This has been so for years. There is some pro-Russian sentiment even among the Italian population. So I think we will see very, very big cracks and a lot of pressure on Giorgia Meloni. And I'm not sure whether she will be able to keep this government on a straight line of support to Ukraine.
Let's get the view from Robert Zile now. You're nodding. And
I would like to remind that Giorgia Meloni, since the 24th of February this year, she was always on the side of Ukraine and to make sanctions. And she always, during campaign even, pointed out this line. And she was had a much higher numbers of representatives in House and in Senate than other two partners in the coalition, like we are not. So that's why I don't think that there would be any trade-off on this issue to continue with the strong sanctions against Russia. And there could be some other, perhaps, coalition on minor issues, but not on this issue. I'm absolutely sure. And also, when we are speaking about this fascism and other things, roots, we are in a bit in a smoke and mirror rooms currently, because Kremlin is calling Jewish president of Ukraine, half-Jewish president of Ukraine, fascist, Nazi, and that's why he make a war. At the same time, of course, Ukrainians, I think very rightly, sometimes they say real fascism is in Russia. So we are calling all these names sometimes and looking on to 1946, if I correctly remember this movement in Italy, what you mentioned. So it's so many years ago, and Giorgia Meloni was not even born at that time, in 46. So why you are linking this route? And I think we are in a very we are over exaggerating with those names and to make stamps on some political leaders or some parties. I think it's a wrong dimension. We have to calm down. We are in a very serious security situation because of aggression of Russia in Ukraine, and this is the most important issue currently.
Robert Zile, they're saying we have to calm down. But just very briefly, very brief answer. How close is she, though? How much influence will she get from Matteo Salvini when it comes to this?
She is competitor with Matteo Salvini. That's why.
Okay,
well, definitely.
Hold that thought and let's move on now and discuss the Italian economy and, of course, that of the European Union, because as you all know, and our viewers too, Italy is the Eurozone's third biggest economy. Inequality is higher than in most advanced economies. Public debt at around 150-160% of Italian GDP. That's the highest in the Eurozone, just after Greece. And we all know, of course, Italy's economy was battered during COVID. And Italy, as you mentioned yourself, it's very much reliant on EU recovery funds. So the big question, will we see clashes now between Rome and Brussels and the EU Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni, who's of course the man in charge of this, when it comes to getting those recovery funds? Let's take a listen first before we ask our guests to Natalie Tocci. She's an Italian political scientist and she's the director of the Istituto Affari Internazionali.
All eyes are, in many respects, on Italy because of Italy's debt situation, because it is amongst the countries that is going to be most acutely affected by this energy and therefore economic crisis. She knows that this is a time in which there's not a lot of messing around to do. This is a time in which Italy needs Europe. Europe actually gives money to Italy. It doesn't take it away. This is not the Eurozone crisis. This is a war. It's an energy and economic crisis triggered by a war. And Meloni knows that one needs European solutions to a crisis, even if it's a national crisis. So she knows this. The way she has spoken up until now reflects this. I suspect that it will, we will basically see, at least up until when this crisis persists, a moderate Meloni sort of addressing this crisis.
Natalie Tocci there, Italian political scientist. So Lucas Mandel, I'd like to first get your reaction. Will she stay moderate, or will she hopefully see those recovery funds up for renegotiation?
Well, thank you for giving so much space for the economic dimension, because as you have mentioned, Italy is the third largest economy, and compared to other member states of the European Union who might also be in economic difficult situations, Italy is a highly industrialized country, and it means a lot also to the strength of European economy in its entirety, to export of Europe. So listening also to colleagues in the round before on the political situation, we should really do our utmost that this new Italian government will not go to the camp of Orban, for example, that this new Italian government will remain under the umbrella of the European outreach to the world and also of the values within Europe which we try to defend. And we have to scrutinize, but we also have to see that the ones who have won the election are very much in favor of the sanctions, which are the first bloodless defense against the bloody war attack in history. And the ones who may have mentioned something against or were against already from the beginning, like Salvini, have lost the election. And I myself have criticized Berlusconi for this statement last week, and I will continue to do so. I'm happy that he said quite the opposite today, but most importantly, Berlusconi is not Forza Italia, and Forza Italia is not Berlusconi, and I really hope for proper and decent people from Forza Italia also in the new government. And entirely, it's true for the whole government that it will have to conduct economic reforms. It will have to align with Brussels in that field, in the field of rule of law, as well as in the field of economy. But the example of Mario Draghi, again, is something the new government should and maybe will coordinate with in order to remain with Italy on a good path economically. Italy has profited a lot from the Recovery and Resilience Fund during the pandemic, and Italy will hopefully also be part of the solutions when it comes to energy crisis and inflation.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. One thing that is very sure, as we have highlighted there, Italy needs those funds. And I guess the question is, will there be a clash? Alexander Giza, I'd like to ask you, do you think there'll be a clash when it comes to accessing those funds, when it comes to them getting the batch of funding that they need?
Well, there is a national plan that Italy has that has been approved by the Commission and that is being executed. And I think if the new government stays with this plan, there won't be a clash. There's no need for a clash. I mean, no European Commission will withhold funds only because the government has changed, as in the Italian debate there were these kind of insinuations. I don't know how many of you are familiar with really the internal Italian debate on social media, but there was a heavy attack against Ursula von der Leyen. And I think this is really exceptional because this government this is a coalition government that was supported by the European Popular Party. Manfred Weber, the head of your group here, went to Italy to support Berlusconi, to support this government, while there was a campaign going on against Ursula von der Leyen, who also comes from the same party. So, I mean, there was really a difficult debate, and I think the supporters of Meloni and of Salvini were part of all this hateful speech circulating in the net against the Commission president.
Just bringing it back
to I don't think there needs to be a clash, but Meloni has already announced that she wants to renegotiate the plan, and I don't think renegotiating the plan just because you have different political objectives is not a good idea, because Italy needs this money into its economy right now and not in 2 years. So asking the Commission to renegotiate is really not a good idea for the Italian economy.
And Giorgia Meloni, of course, she was on the streets campaigning on bread and butter issues, cost of living crisis, making big, bold promises to the Italian people that, of course, will she be able to deliver on? Will she be able to make good on those promises, Robert Seale?
Yes, she will. I think she will, because also she received a lot of trust. She was the only leader of the only party in Italy, Fratelli d'Italia, who was not part of Draghi government. So, and that's why I think people trusted for changes. She inherited 150% gross government debt. It was done mainly by, I would say so, left-wing politicians in Italy for decades. And the European Commission didn't react so much to create such a huge the gross debt, so we have to take into account. And it will be not easy, but with the RFF, with the Resilience Recovery Fund negotiations, it's going on with some other countries as well, because Recovery EU requires, and you can read the Commission proposal for Recovery EU, you have to use mainly loan part of the money for new challenges related with energy security. So it's normal that there is that was COVID or pandemic-oriented money, but now it's some other priorities. And the fast money which is in the hands of the European institutions like European Commission is the Resilience Recovery Facility now money. And this is normal. This is nothing very, how to say, like blitz from the sky or something like that. It's just a normal procedure.
And another thing, during her campaign, she promised that she would get support from Brussels, from the EU institutions, when it comes to addressing the energy crisis that's currently everyone in Europe is feeling right now in their pockets. Juan López Aguilar.
Now you're touching upon the most delicate dimension of the Italian riddle for the coming years. For one thing, sure, when it comes to numbers, Italy is big, the third largest economy. When it comes to social balance, Italy is in trouble. There is much social unrest in Italy. There are inequalities, both regional and territorial, but also social, between the rich and the poor, with an impoverished middle and working class, with high inflation, social tensions in every way. And when Italy leans the hard right, it cannot simply align with Hungary and Poland, which are not part of the euro. Italy is euro. Italy needs alliances within the Eurogroup. Italy needs to work together, both in the Council and with the Commission, in order to tackle, in order to face their huge economic challenges. Then there's also the demographic dimension. Italy is aging, and yet still resisting with much reluctance all sorts of migrants and making migration a major issue of their campaign, which goes also in a way which is contrary to the direction in which the European Union is trying to face the opportunity of bringing up a new migration and asylum pact. But when it comes to energy, all the same. You need to work together with the European Union precisely to bring up a European dimension to the so-called strategic autonomy. One of whose component elements is certainly energetic autonomy, which means that we have to cut the dependency of certain providers, namely Russia, which is not certainly the major problem of Italy, but also diversifying your suppliers and, by the same token, speeding up the renewable energies diet. So,
but funny, climate
to do
change.
that, you need to go European, and you need to work with Ursula von der Leyen's Commission and with this European Parliament, which is certainly not been the campaign that Giorgia Meloni and his alliances
well, even the word climate change,
for.
I don't think even came up in her campaign. Not that I saw. I don't know if the EU Green Deal is on her priority list. I don't think so. But you did mention migration. I'd like to go back to that, because one major issue, of course, during her campaign was migration and towing a line on that. And here in Brussels for the last 2 years, we've been discussing since September 2020 the new Asylum and Migration Pact. It's still stuck. It's stuck at council level. So my question to you all is, what will happen to it now with this new government coming in to Italy? Alexandra Gies, I'll start with you.
I think the expert on migration just spoke. I totally agree that Italy needs to cooperate with the rest of Europe. I do have to say that Italy has been asking for stronger cooperation and concessions from the rest of Europe for 20 years, and rightly so. I used to live in Italy from 2000 to 2010. And I know Italy really did a lot for migrants at that time, and Europe didn't help, including my country, Germany. So I think now it's really, really, really time finally to turn around and make this agreement. But this is where Italy really needs to be there. Because when Matteo Salvini was the Minister of the Interior, he had a lot of hate against migrants. He campaigned on this, a lot of propaganda, lies about migrants on social networks all the time, which helped to heat up racism in Italy. But he didn't show up at council meetings. And this is not how you get a constructive solution. So I think this will depend on Meloni. I think Europe will hopefully be ready to find finally a constructive solution. But we will have to be there. And starting out saying, well, the party in Brussels is over, is maybe not a good idea to make friends in Europe.
And Giorgia Meloni is calling for a full naval blockade in the Mediterranean Sea. Is that even legal, Robert Zito?
No. Well, I am not speaking about a legal point of view because I'm an economist. But let's be honest. Italy is on a crossroads of the migrants trafficking. So there are legal part and maybe non-legal part, and also criminalities. There is, of course, definitely. But currently, I think it's much more a hot issue what we were going, how to support Ukraine and real refugees, because it's mainly women and children, not young men like from I would say from African or Middle Asian coast. That is a bit different. So that's why I think we have to take care. In Poland cannot, for example, to keep 2 million refugees alone. So that we have to solve. And also there is a illegal migration which experienced my country, Lithuania, Poland during the summer from Belarus, which was also mainly Kurds, who was organized, and we stopped them. It was maybe was not illegal, but we really think that they are not really persons who are real potential refugees. And that's why I think it was understood that the Commission understood it, I think, and that's why we are keeping our borders in eastern part of Europe very strongly. And there are some other priorities in the sense of migration. We have to take into account very different migration flows and to find one legal framework for all this, which take into account all differences. And Russian migration of those who are running away from mobilization in the Russian army now.
Well,
it's again new situation.
But finding consensus on migration in this issue has been a huge
we need
challenge.
to find, but there are
been under
different
discussion for many years with no end in sight. Juan López Aguilar, of course, you are the expert here around the table on the issue. You're working very closely with the topic for many, many years. What will this new government initially mean for the very much already divisive discussions on the topic?
I have been honoured to chair the Committee of Liberty, Justice and Home Affairs in this European Parliament for some years, which is the one responsible precisely to bring about legislation on migration and asylum, and is yet to be learned from the Member States that it's not the sole competence of the Member States anymore. It is to be shared by the European Union decision and lawmaking. I can still recall Matteo Salvini as Minister of Interior in the Justice and Home Affairs Council of Ministers, extremely dysfunctional, not only with an aggressive rhetoric, but also with actions that were bluntly against EU law. EU law means that we have to address a holistic approach, we call it, acting in countries of origin and transit, with a search and rescue dimension, which means that we have to respect international humanitarian law and EU law when it comes to search and rescue, and he did not. He was also convicted by the courts precisely for not doing so. Then it takes also respecting EU law when it comes to migration and asylum issues, because there is a whole array of legislative acts. We call it migration package and asylum package. And yet we still have to strike a new balance between solidarity and shared responsibility, which was exactly the one opposed by Giorgia Meloni. And I'm still extremely concerned because, for one thing, solidarity has been championed by a Med5 group, which are the countries leaning on the Mediterranean, namely Spain, also in the Atlantic. I'm from the Canary Islands, Italy, Malta, Cyprus and Greece. That takes shared responsibility and asking for solidarity from the rest, because it concerns the external dimension of the European Union, concerns all of the European Union, not only to the neighbouring member states to the Mediterranean. If Italy falls in the dark side of the force in this particular regard, that would be a major blow for the goal that we have to deliver, the goal that we have to accomplish, which is bring about a balance which is to be struck between solidarity, shared responsibility and dignified treatment for those who are eligible for asylum, and dignified returns for those who are not.
Let's hear from Lucas Mandel there. I mean, that word solidarity gets thrown around a lot. I mean, you mentioned we need unity, but of course, and politics, of course, it's all about compromises. I mean, do you see any space here for compromise making in this area from this new government?
Of course, I'm an optimist and I try to work on things. And we are located today for this discussion in the studios of the European Parliament. And it's the European Parliament which will have to decide, beside the Council and the Member States' governments, on the asylum package that has been proposed by the European Commission already 2020. And it's pretty reasonable what the European Commission has proposed on migration. We have to work on it. In the past migration crisis, Italy was more touched than others, like Greece, like Austria in a different way, like Germany in a different way, like Sweden. These countries were touched more than others, also Spain more than others. And this is why solidarity is so important when it comes to the whole procedure for asylum-seeking people. It's up to courts and it's up to legal bodies to decide whether one has a right of asylum or not. And what we face now is the Ukraine crisis different. kind of migration. What we face also is that Putin Russia is causing famine and hunger. At least there's a high probability for that, and maybe a new migration crisis due to that. This is why it's really timely that we deal with the Commission's proposal. And as I have said, I'm optimistic that the Italian government will also constructively discuss on that.
Okay, well, let's see what happens in that area. Giorgia Meloni, she will be the first female Prime Minister of Italy. It's my question now, and I'll address it first to our woman here around the panel. What will we see regarding women's rights? Will she champion women's rights, do you think?
I don't think so, because she is basically the only woman in her party. She has a party that is called the Brothers of Italy, and that's no coincidence that it's not the brothers and sisters of Italy, it's the Brothers of Italy. It's certainly her merit that she managed to lead this party and very, very successfully, I have to admit. But I haven't heard her advocating for women as a whole. I have heard her saying she is attacked because she is a mother or because she is heterosexual. That I don't know how many people have ever been attacked because they are heterosexual. I think she is using this in a very instrumental way, and she has convinced some women to vote for her. Because she could be a role model. But
her brothers, she has 8 brothers.
No, please.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want to advance women's rights, then you need, for example, to have a balanced government. The lists of ministers that were circulating 10 days ago, that were 3 female ministers out of 27, and none of them with an important ministry. So just having one woman at the top does not help. You really have to have enough women.
Well, no, we know that there are a lot of groups here in the European Parliament and political families which always fight for gender equality. So I think you cannot say that some politicians, women, are right and some are wrong. And please don't elect the wrong woman as a political leader. So I think we are going to this totally wrong direction with such approach. So
and just very briefly, could we see Italy regress on issues like access to abortion? Briefly.
I don't think so. Women are making it all the way. In Italy, there has been a woman president of the Senate, president of the House, president of the Constitutional Court. Yes, it is about time that there's a woman prime minister, but that's not enough to say that we are having something which is real advancement on rights, on equal rights, and particular sensitive issues as right to abortion. On the contrary, the motto of Fratelli d'Italia is Dio, Patria e Familia. That means God, fatherland and family, in the most conservative way you might think of those terms.
What's wrong with the family? What's wrong with the family?
But it's only one type of family.
The point is that conservative approach to family certainly does have nothing to do with equal rights for LGBT people, or for abortion rights, or for the self-determination of women on their own bodies. I think it's a way of thinking which is massively influenced by religious integrist thinking, which is not to be expected. That would be a major advancement for women's rights to have a women prime minister like Giorgia Meloni.
Okay, we've just 2 minutes left, so I'd like to leave Italy beside us and look ahead to the European elections, of course, taking place in 2024. There's elections as well coming up soon in the Czech Republic, in Spain. So my question to you all, very, very briefly, is are we seeing the beginning of a Europe swinging to the right?
It was predicted several times that it would swing into that direction and in the other direction. 2 years ago, everybody spoke about the EPP would take over everything. Then we had a huge wave of social democratic parties. That's democracy, and that's what I also like about democracy, that things change because people voting behavior changes and policies changes.
Yep.
So we will see that, and hopefully good candidates from each and every party and country will run for the elections 2024.
Very briefly, Alexander?
I totally agree. Nobody can say what is going to happen in 2024. The important thing is that we make sure that there will still be democracies, that the rules are the same, that we all play by the same rules, have the same rights. Who could have said that a year ago, that we would be sitting here discussing a war in the heart of Europe?
Was it clear?
For sure, democracy is essential. I can only be sorry that the turnout was so low. But whatever democracy says, it must be respected by the rest of us for the European Union and work with it. But having said this, I can also add that you still have to stick by the European idea of democracy, which is respecting pluralism, respecting minorities, respecting those who oppose you, respecting those who criticize you. They have every right to be part of the Italian and European social fabric.
And that voter turnout trend we're seeing all across Europe.
I think we have to just calm down and trust in democracy. And the citizens of European Union 2024 will know to whom vote, and we have to respect it.
Okay. Robert Zeal there from the European Conservatives and Reformists, thank you so much for that. Lucas Mandl, Austrian MEP from the European People's Party, thank you so much as well for being with us here on Euronews. Alexander Giza, German MEP there from the group of the Greens and the European Free Alliance. And also Juan Fernando López Aguilar, Spanish MEP from the Socialists and Democrats. Thank you so much for being with us for this discussion.
Thank you for
all
having
about the Italian elections. And thank you so much for watching. Take care and goodbye.